Good afternoon, guys. Just wanted to go over what's going on next here. So I got my welder out, starting to go through the consumable items for the MIG gun, just making sure I have enough tips and things like that. Making sure they're the right size tips. I got tips for 25 thousandths, 30 thousandths, 35 thousandths wire, which I'm going to be using 35 thousandths wire the whole time anyway. For these brackets because they're pretty thick. So these are 35 thousandths mild steel wire with a 75-25 mix. Should be pretty good. So the kit that I have is the Evo high clearance long arm, and it is a weld-on kit. So these are the brackets. So these are the long arm brackets themselves, one for each corner, and then these are actually cut for a Dana 60 or a Dynatrac 60 radius. So I'm gonna have to make this a little bigger because they go on the rear axle. You cut off the brackets that come with the axle, the lower control arm brackets, and then you weld these on in their place. So you have to make this radius bigger for the tube size on the Dynatrac 80, and then weld these on in place, and then it lifts the control arm and the coilover mount. Everything goes up almost 4 inches, so you get almost 4 inches of extra clearance in the rear. It's part of why it's called the high clearance long arm. Another reason is they move the rear uppers to the side of the frame instead of hanging off the bottom of the frame, which is really nice. So same thing with the front. These are new track bar brackets. So this is the front track bar bracket. Front track bar bracket. So I'm going to cut the factory one off, weld this one on. Then this is the rear, and let me show you why. Let me just show you, because so Paint Train I got as an insurance buyback, right? It has a salvage title. It belonged to Brett. It got into an accident, and the insurance company totaled it. So one of the main reasons why they totaled it was the rear track bar bracket. So as far as I can tell, it's the only reason why, other than the cage was bent just a little bit. So between the cage and this bracket, which both are getting cut out for my project, is the reason why it was totaled. It runs, purrs like a kit, and everything else works just fine. But you can see when he got hit in the wheel, it literally pushed the rear track bar through the bracket. And just, you can see how thin it is, which is, I mean, it took an accident for this to happen. However, the material is pretty thin. So I'm going to change it up and use a full 3/16 thick plate bracket. Front and rear are getting replaced with these much thicker brackets. So this will just go right in place of that one. And then of course all of the factory brackets will have to be cut off. So all these will get plasma cut it off and then grind it down to the frame. Same with the fronts, you know. And then I got to take the steering box back out in order to do the front track bar bracket, but that's okay, it'll come right out. And then let's see, and then I have the rear bump stops. So these rear air bumps, I have to remove the factory bump stop cup. So I have to cut this cup off, and then there's a template that comes with the kit where you drill a hole, and then you drill, I think it's 2 5/16, pretty sure, hole into the frame, and then you push this into the frame, and then you weld this in, and then the bump stop goes inside of it. So I've got to do that as well. So all of those brackets, the rear bump stop brackets, require welding for this kit. Here's the template right here. So this template is, that small hole is how they're centering the location of this bracket, or of this, inside the frame. Let's see, these big brackets here are the front coilover mounts. I think there's only 1 or 2 holes I have to drill for those. This is a rear track bar bracket, which I won't need. The 80 comes with a super beefy track bar bracket, so I'm not even going to use that. Front bump stop, rear bump stop, skids that came with it, bump blocks. That's the rear coilover, and then these links I won't need. The sway bar links I won't need either. I got a couple anti-rocks, the front and rear anti-rock to put on as well. But when I ordered my axle, I ordered it and specifically asked them to only tack the Dynatrac rear lower brackets on the axle. So you can ask them to do that. If you're doing something like this, you can always just ask them to tack on whatever bracket that you're going to be replacing. So it's not a big deal when you order it. Let's see. Yeah, that's about it. Watching the videos and reading the instructions and things like that from Evo, they make this pretty simple with these holes locating with holes on the factory frame. So you essentially just take this bracket and you bolt it into place, and you weld it while it's bolted in, right? So it's locating the bracket is super easy. So you bolt it in, then you mark it off, and then you obviously grind all the paint off and just prep it for welding. And then you just prime and paint after that. So it's just a lot of work. So it is a lot of work. I picked up a new carbon brush. My carbon brush is just absolutely toast. I picked up a new welding clamp, one that's actually copper instead of zinc plated steel, which works great, which is what comes on the welder originally. Is zinc plated steel is good, but copper or brass are even better. So I went and bought I'm going to swap out my ground for a full copper ground. I got a new cover here. This one, it can be cleaned up. That one's not too bad, but I got a new one anyway. And then I need a new tip. This one's pretty dirty. Other than that, she should be ready to go. Now it's just trying to get time to do it. That's my next issue. Yeah, got a set of gears coming this weekend. I'll do those and get those out of the way for David, and then maybe I'll have time to start on this rear bracket over here. Again, they're pretty thin and they do tear. Just keep that in mind. Not necessarily for breaking like this one did, but if you have loose bolts or loose track bar bolts, the holes will wallow out really easily with how thin that material is. So you got to make sure that it's always torqued. And then check the length of your track bar bolts, so they can only handle being torqued so many times before the bolt is being stretched, and when it gets stretched it gets thinner, and when it gets thinner it becomes too small for the hole, and then it'll wallow out, usually on the nut side first. So the hole will be bigger on this side than on this side, but once it starts moving, it'll wallow it out. If you drive for a really long time, when you say a really long time, it really doesn't take that long, but if you drive with loose track bar bolts, you can end up with a problem. Well, there's several companies out there that make brackets that go around the factory one. They've been doing that for the JK forever. The JL same way. There's companies out there that are doing it. But that was a quick update for the next steps, and we'll see what happens when I get some time for these brackets. All right, thanks guys. Bye.